Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Vice President Harris for the opportunity to be here and to be part of today's discussion, one that is focused on U.S. government efforts to promote water security. Water security is critical to national security. At the Department of Defense, we know firsthand that this is true. Water security is necessary to carry out our missions at home and abroad. This is because water insecurity, including impacts of floods and droughts, can create unprecedented challenges for governments, affect the demands on and functionality of military operations, increase humanitarian crises, and create opportunities for violent groups to leverage limited water supplies to gain influence. For example, drought can lead to competition over scarce water resources and heighten social and political tensions within or between countries. Floods can result in deaths, cause economic and infrastructure damage, and disrupt supply chains. Both of these extreme event types can contribute to instability, conflict, humanitarian crises, and the likelihood of migration. We also see how water insecurity contributes to health challenges and gender inequality, further straining peace and stability. Water insecurity may affect U.S. national interests directly or contribute to requests for U.S. government assistance from other countries. Additionally, climate change is exacerbating water insecurity, both at home and abroad. In fact, many of the security implications of climate change are related to water, whether it's too much or too little. We cannot solve the climate crisis without considering water, whether for drinking, agriculture, or electricity generation. Many of the most important opportunities to adapt to and combat climate change are linked to our ability to manage water resources and prepare for extreme hydraulic events. We can only meet these challenges by leveraging the best science and data and working closely with communities, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector. Additionally, we must seize opportunities to develop and deploy new technology and advances in science to increase global water security and strengthen U.S. national security. To keep our nation secure, we know that we must work together to increase global water security. DoD is ready to support other U.S. government agencies and departments in taking action to increase water, climate, and national security. I'm pleased to introduce Alice Albright, the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Good morning. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. I'm just delighted to be here today participating in today's discussion and to be able to speak to the work that we at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, or MCC, are doing to contribute to the U.S. government's efforts to promote water security. MCC has long been working to address the growing challenge of water insecurity, but we know we must and are committed to doing more. As with our investments in food and energy, investing in clean, affordable, and reliable water is essential to advancing our mission to reduce global poverty through sustainable and inclusive economic growth. MCC combines large infrastructure investments with policy and institutional reforms to address urgent water, sanitation, and irrigation challenges. To date, MCC has invested $2.8 billion of grant funding in 30 countries in the wash and irrigation sectors, benefiting over 21 million people. This represents nearly 1/5 of MCC's overall investments since the agency was founded in 2004. These investments have resulted in 258 million more liters per day of water production capacity, which has increased access to safe and reliable drinking water, the construction of more than 30,000 sanitation facilities, the construction or replacement of nearly 1,700 kilometers of water pipelines, and enhanced irrigation for almost 204,000 hectares of land, which means increased production and ultimately income. MCC's investments have led to measures for improved municipal water reuse in Mongolia and have helped address the needs of rural small family farms in Niger. MCC's investments have also worked to improve the efficiency of water delivery and wastewater treatment in Jordan. MCC's investments have also helped to deliver reliable, safe drinking water to 2 communities in Sierra Leone's capital. And in Timor-Leste, our planned investment will create the first large-scale water sanitation treatment plant in the country. These are but a few examples of how MCC is delivering on the U.S. government's commitment to advancing water security. Experience has taught us that we must continue to focus on affordability and expanding access for marginalized and vulnerable groups. Experience has also reinforced the value of country ownership, which is central to MCC's business model, and which is rooted in partnership, very closely working with the countries where we work. And finally, which ensures that the impacts of our investments are sustained by our partners long after our engagements come to an end. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be a part of answering the call on this immense global challenge. MCC is deeply committed to doing our part, and we look forward to working with all of you, and especially with Vice President Harris, to elevate our investments in water security and build healthier communities and societies while preserving one of our greatest treasures for many generations to come. Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Administrator of USAID, Samantha Power. Welcome, Samantha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Alice, for your remarks and for your leadership of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is a vital tool, as you heard in this context and as we see in so many contexts, a vital tool in America's toolbox and a massively impactful development actor in the world. Also, thanks to Deputy Secretary Hicks for your remarks and for the role, as you've indicated, that Department of Defense plays in protecting water security around the world. It is an under-heralded feature of DoD's vital work. And thank you to Vice President Harris for the invitation to speak today. The Vice President has long been an advocate on water security, going back to her time as a senator when she introduced legislation to strengthen the safety and sustainability of our domestic supply while supporting global programs which seek to do the same abroad. 22 years ago, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, a personal friend, mentor, and hero of mine, but much more importantly, Alice's mother, called for the creation of the Alliance for Global Water Security that would establish a coalition of global partners to eliminate water as a source of instability in the world. Her call to action was groundbreaking at the time. In her remarks, she detailed the ecological and economic threats that climate change posed as temperatures rose. She did all of this, again, not 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, but 22 years ago, in 2000, at a time when most of the world was not seriously prioritizing water security. Secretary Albright always had foresight. And on this issue, of course, she was unfortunately again correct. As we know, the climate crisis has had dramatic, often shattering, devastating effects on water security. And today at USAID's 80 missions around the world, we see the repercussions of water insecurity everywhere. In the Horn of Africa, droughts are causing livestock to die of thirst and delaying a planting season that had been consistent and reliable for generations. This is putting 16 million people at risk of starvation just this year. As every nation grapples with the climate crisis, some leaders are taking advantage of water insecurity and actually wielding it as a weapon of war. As a result of Putin's attacks on water treatment plants and bloody seizures of critical waterways, nearly a quarter of all Ukrainians, that's over 11 million people, currently do not have access to clean water. A very, very different circumstance than existed in Ukraine prior to February 24th. In Mariupol, water was almost completely cut off during the siege as distribution infrastructure was destroyed. One resident said they were relying on water that was filled in baths months previously before the pumps stopped working, and bottled water that quickly ran out. The United States has united a strong coalition to support the people of Ukraine, and we will continue to address water insecurity and support efforts aimed at proper hygiene and sanitation. At USAID, we'll use our years of experience combating water-related challenges to address this, in Ukraine, this crisis, and so many water-related crises around the world. Since 2008, our agency has enabled nearly 60 million people to access safe drinking water and 45 million people to access sanitation. Despite our efforts, though, the scale of the challenge remains immense. Today, nearly 2.2 billion people, almost 1/3 of the world, lack access to clean water. So rather than rely solely on our own funding, we're bringing in new partners. And over the last 3 years, we've mobilized $314 million in new public and private financing for water and sanitation. As Secretary Albright said back in the day, the result of water insecurity is economically crippling and flat out unacceptable. More than 2 decades later, her words echo with powerful resonance. We cannot wait another 22 years. The stakes are too high. As Vice President Harris will soon discuss, now is the time to address global water insecurity and expand access to proper sanitation and hygiene for everyone around the world. Thank you so much. I am now honored to introduce Sonia Cherigian. Sonia, over to you.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here to represent the many civil servants that work every day to advance the U.S. government's efforts to preserve one of our most treasured global resources, water. I've seen how efforts of Millennium Challenge Corporation staff, like myself, and our partners in 30 countries have benefited over 21 million people with reliable access to water and sanitation since MCC was founded 18 years ago. As we expand our work with partners in Niger, Mongolia, Kiribati, and Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste, we expect these numbers to grow. I just returned from Dili, where I saw and heard firsthand from our partners in Timor-Leste about the importance of the US government's investments to provide clean, centrally available water through MCC's compact developed in partnership with the government of Timor-Leste. In a few years' time, hundreds of thousands of Timorese will be able to turn on the taps in their homes and reliably access clean drinking water. We're also working to ensure community-level uptake of safe storage, treatment, and use of water, while also strengthening the institutions that will help ensure Timor-Leste's water security over the coming decades. Our investment in Timor is one concrete example of the US government's commitment to advancing progress toward global water security. And it is now my great honor to introduce a leader on water issues at home and abroad, Vice President Kamala Harris.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sonia. And this whole, what a powerful group of American leaders. I'm honored to be with all of you this morning and in this fight. So thank you, each one of you, for the work that you are doing. I was remembering and talking with my team about how even when I was in the Senate, we would talk about this issue in some of the committee hearings when we were reviewing nominees and the connection between this issue and national security, and people laughed it off. Oh, well, is that a serious issue? Is there really a connection there? And it's only been a few short years where people are, because of the extreme nature of it and the rapidity of the time that has passed in terms of the escalation of the issue, that people are finally understanding what you all have been working on for years and years and years. So thank you for that, and to everyone here. So as many of you know, I am a daughter of California. And as a result, many things have probably flowed from that, pardon the pun, but one of them has been, I have been my entire life acutely aware of the reality of water scarcity. I remember I was, I think 12 in middle school, about that age, 13, when we experienced an extreme drought in California. And I remember watching in the Oakland Hills, Northern California, the landscape turning from green to brown. And everyone, from my mother, our teachers, the radio DJs, KDIA, Lucky 13, saying how important it was to conserve water. And we understood that each of us had a personal responsibility, no matter our age, to take the matter seriously and to understand that with the extreme nature of the harm that results from drought, we each have a personal responsibility that may include and require some sacrifice. And I remember how unsettling it was to imagine how our access to a resource so basic and essential as water, how that could become so uncertain that we could not take it for granted. It is a reality that more and more people in our nation are, however, experiencing and understanding this issue every day. As our planet warms and weather patterns change, extreme drought is becoming increasingly common. At this moment, about 90 million Americans are living under drought conditions, and the start of summer is still weeks away. Across the West, we have seen the terrible cost of the climate crisis. And I have visited many of the places where we have seen the wildfires, where families have lost their homes and their loved ones, where entire communities have been wiped out. I have met with and talked with the firefighters. My brother-in-law is a firefighter in California. And many of them who work 24-hour shifts in some of the most dangerous conditions that you can imagine to keep us safe. Farmers and agricultural workers who lost their livelihoods because the rains just simply did not come. And communities who have felt firsthand how the economic impact of water scarcity ripples out, driving up prices and driving a real sense of urgency about what also results in terms of lack of opportunity. And that's not all. Our nation also faces water insecurity challenges beyond those driven by climate change. For decades, of course, our country has chronically underinvested in water infrastructure, depriving many communities of reliable access to safe drinking water. Take the issue, which many of us have worked on together, of lead pipes. Lead is a poison. For adults drinking water contaminated with lead, it can lead to an increase in blood pressure and a decrease in kidney function. For children, it can stunt growth, slow down learning, and cause irreparable damage to the brain. And yet today, as many as 10 million households get their water through lead pipes and service lines in America, as do up to 400,000 schools and child care facilities. As a result, our country today, in this country, more than half of children under the age of 6 are at risk of lead exposure. Obviously, this is unconscionable and utterly unacceptable. Every person in our nation deserves access to clean water, and every community in our nation deserves water security. As a United States Senator, I introduced legislation to advance smart water policy, to invest in efficiency and recycling technology, and to take on the problem of lead pipes. Over the past year, I have met with many world leaders to discuss these issues, from the King of Jordan to the Prime Minister of Vietnam to the President of Israel. Our administration recognizes the urgency of water security, which is why our President, Joe Biden, invested over $63 billion in our nation's water infrastructure through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to put us on a path to remove every lead pipe in our country within the next 10 years, and to fund water efficiency, water reuse, and groundwater storage projects, hopefully emphasizing underwater storage projects, in communities across our nation. In addition, our administration has made drought resilience a priority. Today, we are releasing the one-year report of the first-ever Drought Resilience Interagency Working Group. It will help chart our nation's path forward to a more sustainable future. Since we took office, our administration has made important progress in protecting water security here at home. We also recognize how important it is to extend that work beyond our nation's borders. Today, billions of people around the world do not have access to clean, safe water. And in the coming years, climate change, population growth, urbanization, and environmental degradation will only drive that number higher. By 2030, almost half of the world's population will struggle to meet their water needs. Think about that. Almost half of the world's population will struggle to meet their needs to have access to water. And it will, of course, have then a profound impact on America's interests around the globe. Water insecurity makes our world less stable. When water is scarce, it becomes more difficult for communities to produce food, as these experts have talked about, more difficult to protect public health and to drive economic growth. This, in turn, as has been discussed, can lead to mass migration, which can put significant pressure on neighboring communities. Water insecurity also makes our world less safe. Disputes between countries or communities over limited water resources can predictably, and by extension, over time, provoke armed conflict. So let's get in front of this. Let's take it seriously. Let's understand the various ramifications of this issue. And let's also deal with the reality that within the variety of issues that are presented, there is the issue of equity. Because finally we know that water insecurity makes our world less equitable. Think about it this way. In many countries, the responsibility for collecting water disproportionately falls on women and girls. Worldwide, women and girls spend 200 million hours a day, 200 million hours a day, gathering water. That is 200 million hours that could have been spent. We often around this place talk about opportunity costs. Let's have that discussion. It is 200 million hours a day that could be spent by those women and girls in school, at work, or at home with loved ones. And unless we take action to make water more accessible for communities around the world, that number will only grow in the coming years. So it comes down to this. Many of our most fundamental national security interests depend on water security. And that is why today we are releasing our action plan on global water security. This action plan will cement America's role of leadership on water security issues. And it will do so first by fully committing our nation to the collective fight to provide access to safe water, hygiene, and sanitation services in every community in every country. Second, by sharing our world-leading water data, which we are collecting on the ground, literally, and through satellite technology. Collecting that data and sharing it, and the technical expertise that comes with that, with the international community to help manage and preserve global water resources. And third, by using our nation's considerable diplomatic resources, the great leader of USAID, we have so many leaders, to elevate water security as an international priority. This action plan will help our country prevent conflict and advance cooperation among nations, increase equity and economic growth, and make our world more inclusive and resilient. The past 2.5 years during the pandemic have demonstrated that our world is more interconnected and interdependent than ever before. Water scarcity is a global problem, and it must be met with a global solution. So today, we make clear the United States will be a leader in the solution. Thank you all for your partnership in this fight. Together, I know we will create a future in which every person in every community has access to our world's most precious resource. Thank you all.